As the war approaches its third anniversary, our message is clear. The bloodshed must stop, and this war must end. President Trump has been clear with the American people and with many of your leaders that stopping the fighting and reaching an enduring peace is a top priority. We will only end this devastating war and establish a durable peace by coupling allied strength with a realistic assessment of the battlefield. We want, like you, a sovereign and prosperous Ukraine. But we must start by recognizing that returning to Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is an unrealistic objective. Chasing this illusionary goal will only prolong the war and cause more suffering. The United States does not believe that NATO membership for Ukraine is a realistic outcome of a negotiated settlement. Instead, any security guarantee must be backed by capable European and non-European troops. If these troops are deployed as peacekeepers to Ukraine at any point, they should be deployed as part of a non-NATO mission. To be clear, as part of any security guarantee, there will not be U.S. troops deployed to Ukraine.
This week, Vice President J.D. Vance stunned leaders in Europe, questioning whether their values warranted defense by the United States. Vance spoke in Munich, painting a picture of European politics infected by media censorship and political correctness. Here's CBS's Elizabeth Palmer.
The vice president's speech was a broadside aimed at European leaders who just weren't expecting it, especially Germany's. It's not only hosting the conference, but will be heading into national elections next week. The address accused mainstream European politicians of failing to control immigration and then eroding free speech by muzzling far-right anti-immigration parties.
The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within.
The chill in the room gave way to real anger. Germany's defense minister Boris Pistorius said comparing European governments to authoritarian regimes was just unacceptable. There has also been a furious reaction in the European media, too. The speech has been called vengeful, preachy, unkind, and above all, widening the rift between America and its allies and friends. Meanwhile, all eyes had been on a meeting between the U.S. Vice President and Secretary of State and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. But after only half an hour, the discussion ended with no new information on how the U.S. would help bring an end to Russia's war with Ukraine, or crucially, what role Ukraine itself would play in negotiations that will shape its own future. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, Munich.
All right, Shalom. This is a brother Nahalia from the GMS Orlando camp. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rokah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasha Allah, and a sincere salutation to all Yuakim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwat, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. This is Joel chapter 3 and verse 9, and it reads, "Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong." All right, and I also want to go into this precept as well before I begin. This is Revelation chapter 17 and 16. "And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For Yahweh Shemel shall put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast until the words of Yahweh Shemel Shai shall be fulfilled." All right, and I want to go into a lesson through the Spirit on an important topic concerning prophecy. All right, and that is the European alliance with America being destroyed, basically. All right. And that's according to prophecy. All right. When you go through the scriptures, let's go at the top. All right. And then I'll get into the details of the J.D. Vance and the Pete Hegseth speech. All right. Against basically the European allies. All right. One of them was about the NATO and another one was at Munich, I believe. And it was directed towards the European countries. All right. And at this point, they're at a divide. All right. With the Trump administration coming in, as the scriptures say, his look is more stout than his fellows. You have Trump coming in with the same type of attitude he had in his last presidency, where he basically is condescending towards his European allies. And ultimately, it's going to lead to betrayal. All right. So let's start at the top. There's Revelation 17:1. And it reads, "And there came one of the seven angels, which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters." Now that great whore that sitteth upon many waters is going into America. All right. It's going into America. When you deal with the many waters, it'll break it down later in this chapter. But the many waters is basically the people. All right. So you have America basically sitting on top of the nations. All right. Because America really has the power seat, if you will, amongst the nations. All right. Let's continue. I want to jump down to verse 3. All right. And it reads, "So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns." Now, when you deal with the 7 heads and the 10 horns, that is the NATO EU system. All right. America is able to influence the world. All right. Through those two unions. All right. NATO and EU. All right. But again, according to prophecy, the beast is going to hate the whore, because there's going to be a time where they recognize that America isn't for their interests. And they're starting to see it now with those 2 clips that I showed you of the vice president and the secretary of defense basically being condescending towards the European allies. This is going to continue to stoke the fire of betrayal, because we know, according to prophecy, even America's allies are going to turn against her. All right. Now, when you deal with the 7 heads, that's dealing with the NATO countries. All right. Really quick. I'm going to go here. All right. Now, when you go to Revelation, the 13th chapter, it also goes into this beast system. All right. But I want to grab this in particular. So this is Revelation 13:1. "And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy." So this is the beast that the whore is riding upon. All right. Now, when you go into the system, all right, I'm going to just get this info real quick. The 7 heads goes into Germania Major, the Romans, the French, the Spanish, Germania Minor, the British, and the Greeks. And when you deal with the 10 horns, it originally started with the European Economic Community. All right. And it's going into Belgium, Denmark, France, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Greece, Ireland, England, and West Germany. All right. And those were the original countries. At this point, it's expanded. So you have more than these 10 countries in the EU. All right. But this describes that beast. All right. With the 7 heads and the 10 horns. All right. Now, when you look at these nations, right, and I want to go back to my list because I want to show, when you look at these nations, the 10 horns, Belgium, Denmark, France, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Greece, Ireland, England, West Germany. All right. So it's going into these European countries. All right. Because, again, what we saw with those 2 clips is this condescending talk down to these European allies. All right. As if they're not in business with you. All right. And this is ultimately going to stoke that betrayal. All right. Because a part of World War III, all right, is not just America going against Russia, but according to prophecy, America's allies are going to turn on her. All right. This is why when you go to Revelation 17, and I'll grab it again, verse 16, And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. All right, and it goes into those missiles, because ultimately the missiles are not just going to be shot by the enemies of America like China, Iran, Russia, but the allies of America are also going to turn on her. All right, and you can see clearly why they would do that. All right, even when you think about the Ukrainian conflict in general, because one of the statements Pete Hegseth talked about was how Ukraine will never be invited into NATO, which was really what started this whole conflict. Just for Trump to get in and say all of the shit that the Ukrainians fought for these past 3 years, they're still not going to get it. So all of those men really just died for them to end up in the same place. Really, they're at a loss, because all the land that Russia was able to conquer over these 3 years in Ukraine, they're going to get to keep, according to what Pete Hegseth said. That's the resolving of the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. Russia was able to take some land from Ukraine, and Ukraine is not going to be in NATO. So they're not going to be a part of the beast system. And that's what started the war in the first place. So the Europeans are looking at it like, well, y'all didn't even discuss it with us. Because these peace talks between America and Russia, the European nations were not involved. So they already feel left out in that concern. The second thing is that when Biden was in office, they were all on one accord that they're going to keep this war going to weaken Russia until Ukraine gets the desired result. Trump got in there and said, no, we ain't doing none of that. All right, so this is stoking a divide between these so-called allies. All right, this is Matthew 12, and I'm going to jump down to verse 25. And it reads, And Yahushua knew their thoughts and said unto them, Every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand? Think about all the fractures and the divides between the so-called white man's nation, if you will. You have the divide between the American Edomites and the Russian Edomites. And now you have this splinter between the European Edomites and the American Edomites. And it's only going to get worse. You know, that's why I started with Joel, the 3rd chapter, because, again, ultimately the will of the Lord is to bring about war. All right. The third and final war. All right. Third world's war, if you will. There's Revelation 11 and 14. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. And that second woe goes into World War II. And now we see the grumblings, if you will, or the war drums beating for World War III. And what you notice about all three wars when you go throughout history is they're all kind of connected when you look at it. All right, at one point, Germany was on the opposite side of World War I and II. But then with this Third World War, you have an Axis and an ally. All right, so you have a line in the sand where you have the allies of America. All right, and then you have the line in the sand where the Russians have their own set of allies. So the world is being forced to pick a side because ultimately war is on the cusp. All right, China's not going to stop growing. All right, they're not going to stop their plans. And China's economy at this point is becoming greater than, I'll say it that way, they're becoming greater than the American economy. The BRICS together make up more than 50% of the world's population. So there's a line in the sand that's being drawn. And now when you look at America and its allies, even they are splintered amongst each other. And all of this is according to prophecy, because World War III, according to prophecy, will happen. All right. Whether people accept it or not, it doesn't matter, because ultimately the will of the Lord is being done. And we're witnessing it. All right. We're witnessing the divide of these nations. Matter of fact, I quoted it. And Trump did this his last run. All right. You notice that at the G7 summit, there was a famous photo op of Trump, amongst the European leaders, and he kind of pushed his way to the center of it. All right. And there was a picture taken where he was basically, fixing his suit, and he had this look, this real stout look. All right. Now let's go here. This is Daniel 7:20. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth, that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. All right. And that Trump's attitude and his sentiment is the sentiment of these American Edomites. And this is why they voted for him, and they stand behind him, because he's basically the embodiment of the American Edomite pride. All right. And his pride is reflected in his policies. All right. Because J.D. Vance, who is the vice president, and Peter Hegseth, who is the Secretary of Defense, they're only doing and saying what they're saying because of who's in charge. All right. Matter of fact, this is Ecclesiastes 10:1. A wise judge will instruct his people, and the government of a prudent man is well ordered. As the judge of the people is himself, so are his officers. All right. So Trump is proud. So it makes sense that J.D. Vance and Pete Hegseth would go on these speeches where they're basically being condescending towards the allies that they're in bed with. All right. And all of this is according to prophecy. Brothers were talking about this a couple weeks ago at camp, that Esau has stolen and robbed every other nation on the planet, to the point where the only person left to rob is each other, which will bring forth this World War III. Because America is losing the power seat. They're losing that influence. And Trump is the type of prideful Edomite that's going to try to fight to get that position back without bringing anything of value to the table. At this point, the only thing the Americans have at this point is military might. The dollar is still strong, so to speak, but you have these nations moving to get around it. And Trump mentioned it in an interview not too long ago. He mentioned the BRICS nations. All right. And they're setting up their own infrastructure to get around the dollar. Either way, war is coming. But what I noticed about these two speeches in particular is it's stoking that flame of the divide between the allies. All right. Matter of fact, let's go here. This is Obadiah, verse 1. And it reads, the vision of Obadiah. Thus saith the Lord power concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord. If thieves came to thee, if robbers by night, how art thou cut off? Would they not have stolen till they had enough? If the grape gatherers came to thee, would they not leave some grapes? How are the things of Esau searched out? How are his hidden things sought up? Here's the point. All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. And what I bring up a lot through the spirit whenever this precept comes out is, they made fun of everything being made in China. There was that years ago, it used to be like everything was made in China. Well, all of American jobs, the bulk of them went overseas because the companies would save money on labor. All right. They wouldn't have to pay top dollar for American labor. They would just go overseas. And one of the main places they went to was China. So over the years, over the decades, a lot of things started to be produced in China. And they used the money that they made from being the manufacturing hub of the earth to build up their own military, to build up their own influence. And now you have this new Silk Road project that they're starting. All right. The business that they're doing in Africa. All of that was them modeling themselves after the Americans and how they did geopolitics. but they ate the bread of the Americans and they did business, right? They gave the American corporations cheap labor, all right, in exchange for the factories being built in China. And they used that money to build themselves up as a nation. So now they're a major player. And really it's because of the alliance that they had with the Americans. All right, when all of those jobs went over there. And it's beautiful because it's all from the spirit of Yahweh Shema Shai. All right, this is Obadiah, verse 7. All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. And Esau has really been a snare unto himself, from selling his weapons to Saudi Arabia and other nations. All right, to sending all the jobs overseas and allowing these nations to build up their wealth and their infrastructure, all right, to become major players on the world stage. You basically helped your enemies become stronger. And that's why the Lord said at the end of it, there is none understanding in him, because ultimately Esau, the so-called white man, is a tool that the Lord has used to take peace from the earth and to afflict the Israelites. But like that quote from Aristotle, evil destroys everything, even itself. So now that sword that was used to afflict everybody is now being turned against itself. All right. And it's beautiful. That's why in Matthew, the 12th chapter, it says a kingdom that's divided against itself, how can it stand? And we're in a time of prophecy where the Lord is really bringing the so-called white man down to the dust. He's being brought into confusion. All right. And that's according to prophecy. All right, this is Isaiah chapter 47:1. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. All right, and this is describing America. And why is it described as a virgin? Because since it's been established as America, it has not been invaded. All right, it says, sit on the ground. There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. All right, there was a time where America was basically looked at as the land of milk and honey, as the golden city, the land of opportunity, as they say. But now it's become the laughing stock of the world. You know, people have these taunting proverbs against the Americans in particular. And even amongst the allies, all right, the Europeans, they're starting to have these taunting and mocking proverbs because, again, you have Trump coming in office. And he's really just undoing all of the 4 years of Biden. He's undoing all of it. And he's going to the Europeans and saying, look, y'all got to get down with my program or we just going to start pulling funding and we're not going to be a part of this anymore. And it's beautiful because, again, it goes back into prophecy. You know, when you look at, let's say 5 or 6, I'll even say 8, between 5 and 8 years ago, you know, the European and American alliance was strong. All right. It was extremely strong. But what happened is with the Russian situation, it brought a divide because when they did all of those sanctions against Russia, European economies suffered for that. They suffered greatly for that. Now, when you add on top of that, everything that's happening now, it's just building up. And eventually there's going to be a straw that breaks the camel's back. And it all leads unto war through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai. All right, so Lord willing, this was edifying with that. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rokah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasher Allah, and a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word.